And now, it's time for a Star Trek story. Well, my goodness, here we are. Lucky number 13. Episode 13, Aaron.
We made it.
This is our last episode in our look at classic Star Trek. Everything with the original cast. This is our final look at it for this phase of the podcast. What a ride.
What a ride. And of course they pop up again because it's unavoidable. But yeah, this is our look at their first foray into Star Trek.
Last time we watched The Practical Joker, that was our one and only episode of Star Trek the Animated Series for this first phase of the podcast. Very silly episode, but more in a laughing at it than laughing with it. But as silly as it was, that 70s cartoon show did keep the franchise alive after the original show was canceled in 1969. And the 1970s would see this unprecedented revival of interest in the show. It became a surprise smash hit in reruns that would eventually kind of lead to what we're watching today, the 1979 film Star Trek The Motion Picture, our very first Star Trek movie. Kind of a little bit of a milestone for us.
Totally. That, I think, is the moment when it hit reruns and it got famous that way. That's when it really became a cultural thing in the ether. Like, everybody knew Star Trek at that point, right? But when it was on originally, not so much.
It's actually what invented convention circuits. Like everything, like Comic-Con and everything now, like a bunch of dedicated fans started doing Star Trek conventions in the 1970s after it had gone off the air, but when it became a phenomenon. And that was the beginning of basically all these geek and nerd conventions that you see now. Like, it was the Star Trek fans who basically created it. Pretty wild stuff. So to recognize the milestone that this is, we've brought in not just one guest host and not just two guest hosts.
How many?
500,000 guest hosts.
We could start a revolution.
We are coming to you live from multiple football arenas across the...
Let's hear it, folks.
We're getting higher ratings than MLB playoff season right now. Can you believe it, Aaron?
That's a low bar these days.
And that, I'm a baseball fan, but you're not wrong. Well, I guess we should introduce who we have with us today. First off, we have a couple of returning guests.
Oh my goodness.
First off, we have our very first guest coming back from the Man Trap. Tyson Baker is back here with us, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
He's looking over his shoulder like, where? Who is it?
I am the ghost of Christmas past. Pleasure to be back.
Yeah, Tyson, how the hell are you?
I am good. I am grand. I'm excited to be back on the podcast. It's always such a delight to get together with good people, maybe have a little drink and reminisce and pontificate on Star Trek. And the original movie is amazing. It was like I think my first Star Trek movie was the original series, or was Star Trek The Motion Picture. It was like my first introduction to the film movie aspect of Star Trek. So excited to be here.
Lots of nostalgia for you. Well, welcome back to the show. May this be the second of many more appearances.
Kapla.
And that also goes for our second returning guest, Latoya Cameron. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Latoya, of course, was the guest, our second guest. She came aboard for Balance of Terror, which we all thought was an awesome episode.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a lot of fun watching that one. Welcome back to the show, Latoya.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be back.
Yeah. How have you been?
I've been dope as hell, living every day, but this is the highlight of this week, and so I'm just thrilled to be here amongst really great human beings. I get to watch this movie probably for the first time.
Yeah, you haven't seen this.
I probably haven't.
Yeah.
So
You've seen some, but I think we had thought you had not seen this one.
yeah, I feel like this is going to be new. So I'm excited about that aspect and trying to see what sits with me.
Glorious. I'm so happy too because it's the 4K. It's like, according to the people that made the movie, this is the movie that is the finished version. So I'm excited that it's your first time seeing the movie.
This is the time to watch it for sure. Well, also with us is not a returning guest, but a brand new guest. We also wanted to get someone who has an affinity for movies, but isn't necessarily a Star Trek fan, since these Star Trek movies are kind of aimed at more of a mainstream, movie market audience. So also joining us today is a good friend of mine, and Tyson's, our good friend, Sean Leonard. Hello, Sean.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Yes. I'm so excited that you could be here with us. I've been very excited to have you on.
Looking forward to it and getting to watch a film and kind of discuss it afterwards is going to be a great time.
Yeah. So we're all kind of like know each other on a professional level and just become friends, as you do with your buddies at work.
So Jaron's thrown this word a lot around when he talks about you, cinephile. Define what that is.
So basically, my love for film is from when I was younger. I'm studying to be a director of photography right now. So I just have a deep interest in film, watching, got to watch older films, classics, stuff like that, and then into the new and kind of incorporating all of that into current filmography is kind of like my drive right now. Is like I'm trying to look into that and kind of see and learn from what they've done in the past.
Nice. Do you see yourself becoming like a cinematographer or director or something like that in the future?
Yeah, I'm looking for cinematography. That's like my main goal, is just telling a story through pictures, and is just a beautiful thing.
What is it about, I guess, movies as an art form draws you not just to love it, because I think most people love films, but to also do it?
To do it, it's conveying that story. It's conveying sadness, happiness, joy, just all these different emotions that film can elicit in someone. Is just being able to have that effect and make something meaningful and have an imprint in someone else's life in a positive, hopefully positive light, is just, it's almost fulfilling in a way. And it's just, I don't know, with stuff that I've already made and that people have seen, it feels like it's already been accomplished somewhat. And it's just the feeling of knowing that you've had a positive effect on someone else's life is just outstanding. It's an amazing feeling.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of times when we talk about movies, you often talk about the cinematography. That's kind of, I feel like, particularly when I talk about movies, that's what you really fixate and geek out on.
It's almost like the backbone of any movie, I feel like. I don't know. In the same way like percussion is for any band, it's cinematography conveys so much of the story, It's an important part, but it's often like it goes unthanked. It's a thankless part of the movie making process or the show making process, whatever you're working on.
Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks to a lot of it, is that, yeah, your directors get most of the praise, you get any director that you can name, like Tarantino or anything like that. No one really knows who their DP is or director of photography is, but without that, they don't really get a movie made, because they have the camera aspects, the lighting, basically everything that you see, they have that influence on. Like, yeah, the director has a little bit, but it's mostly through the director of photography where that comes from.
But we all love movies. How many times have we all watched movies together and talked about movies together? So now just kind of opening up to everyone, like, what is it about movies that still just captures like the general public's attention? Because like I said, it's not the newest art form. Now there's like video games. Now there's even stuff like VR, and
YouTube serials,
YouTube serials,
TikTok shorts, everything.
Cinema still definitely seems to have its place. Maybe now in recent times, television has started to usurp it, but I don't think, I wouldn't say that it's been taken over. So what is it about cinema specifically that resonates with the general public still.
Well, this might be a cliche, but I think it's all about escapism. You see homes of people who don't have a lot, and they would have a big screen TV before they would have a mattress, say. You know what I mean? It's all about escaping your situation into another world. And I think like the different mediums, like whether it's movies or books or video games or whatever, it's all about how much time you have to escape into that other world. You know what I mean? So if you have 2.5 hours, then go and watch a movie. If you got 30 minutes or whatever, or a whole day, then go escape into a book. That's what it's all about for me, is diving into a different reality to let your imagination run wild and maybe get away from some of the hardships that you're facing in your actual life.
I want to echo. That's so true. That's kind of like I would watch movies growing up, like, and we didn't have cable where I lived, and my parents didn't want to buy cable. Like, we were subjected to like finding a satellite dish connected with a coaxial cable and had to find the signal to not get static. Like, but my friends who all had cable would record like that thing where you like they have a videotape and you record like 3 different cable movies on a video cassette. And I would find days where I would like ask my friends if I could borrow these video cassettes, or I would steal them without them knowing, because they didn't seem to care about them. That's a guilty admission of mine. But like I watched like 3 movies, like they're these VHS tapes with, yeah, exactly what you're saying. These like 2.5 hour self-contained stories that had nothing to do with my existence, that I could kind of escape into, and that I could just watch. And like I became involved in like the characters and the story, and like it was a romantic comedy, you'd fall into the heartthrob. Or if it was, I think this is actually how I found out about Star Trek 4, was it was like the second movie in this cassette that had 3 different cable run movies on it, you know. And the first one was like Some Kind of Wonderful by Breakfast Club guy. I can't even think of his name right now. And then I want to say like True Lies or like Face Off or something, like, and I don't know, just seeing diversity of stories, and it being self-contained, like in a 2.5 hour, like, yeah, what Sean was talking about, like the cinematographer finding specific, like a movie boils down to like specific elements, from like the picture that you create, the shot that you're establishing, to the music, to the performances of the actors. Like, it didn't matter what genre it was. I kind of loved movies growing up, and just kind of that self-contained like 2.5 hour story that you could kind of just fall into, and you get this emotional arc that you get to follow along. Anyway, I'm rambling. That's all I have to say about movies.
That's it. That's all you have to say. I feel like you could say more.
I think for me, I mean, without movies, I wouldn't be where I am today as an actor. It really inspired me very young, of curiosity. It planted this thought of curiousness. And it came from Forrest Gump. Actually, it was like the first film where I was like intrigued by a simple moment that Tom Hanks has with his son when he comes in and he asks a question, and it moved me so much as a child, like that it brought me to such intense tears that I was like, how did this on a TV, like this box, make me feel so deeply? And I think that's what that film can also do, is really connect you to emotions that you might deny yourself of expressing. Because as a kid, like in my household, crying was just a thing that we didn't do, that it was like not encouraged, unfortunately. But when I was able to watch movies, I would notice my family would emote and like feel feelings as a human being, you know? And then I would have to say like Baz Luhrmann's R&J changed my life as well. It made me want to be an actor too. And
that's Romeo plus Juliet.
Yes, Romeo plus Juliet. It changed my whole life. Just like the clipping of how fast the movie moved. I was exposed to Shakespeare for the first time. Some of the heightened, intense emotions, like just like the story itself. I probably would have never been exposed to Shakespeare without film, which is interesting because it kind of brought me back to where movies came from, which was simply storytelling. on stage, you know? And I remember going into high school and continuing trying theater, even though I didn't know it was going to be really the trajectory of like my life at the time. And because I was exposed to Shakespeare through film, I picked a Shakespeare monologue. And then my teacher was like, how do you know Shakespeare like this? And I was like, oh, because of this movie, which is so weird, you know, if you really think about it. But I just think that film has so many tools that allows us to remind ourselves of how many stories are out there. And also it connects us to our humanness at the same time. And then also implements, I think, further empathy, which I'm a big empathy person. I would hope a lot of people would be that way. But like, that's my experience with film, is very much like emoting emotions and connecting me to what that is to be a human being.
I think I used to lucid dream as a kid, and every once in a while I still will, but dream life was always such a big thing. And when I think about, and I had such an awareness of what that experience felt like from a little kid, and I think with movies, cinema is the closest we've gotten to replicating dream imagery, but for other people. Like I don't know if this is how it is for you guys when you dream, but there is almost, unless you're having a super like sensory experience in a dream, which is pretty rare, dreams have an often distant quality to them, even though you're kind of mistaking them for real life. But you might as well mistake movies for real life, or how you respond to them. But even though you're aware of this distance, and I feel like that's kind of what dreaming is. There's often this kind of distance. Sometimes it can be in black and white. Sometimes it can be in color. And it's just these images that are going through your head, and it provokes emotions. And I feel like that's what movies are. I feel like it's dream imagery for the masses, like put to something that we can, a shared dream, if you will. The closest we've ever got to shared dreaming is probably movies.
It's a fascinating thought, actually.
That's my kind of feeling on it.
I kind of have this thought about like how tech in general, like whether it's the internet or whatever, like all of our advancements as humans is just a way to try to connect to each other in a way that our brain already has the capability to do. Right. You know what I mean?
Just tools for what's already there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or something that we maybe had at one point naturally, but just kind of lost. It's all an effort to kind of just bring up that sense of humanity back, you know? And maybe that's once removed now, or twice removed, or more, like through movies or through the internet or through whatever. But it's all just an attempt to get back to that state of empathy that maybe we had as ancient humans.
Sean, do you find yourself, when you are going about your day-to-day life, do you find yourself like either replaying movie scenes, shots, sequences in your head, or maybe even just going about your life like framing shots in your head?
It's definitely a mix of both. I'd say mostly it's framing. It's turning what I see just in everyday life, how I can make that the most like impactful shot that you can, is how you can turn everyday situations that could be happening to anyone, regardless of, you know, who they are, what they look like, anything like that, and making it appeal like artistically. Whether it's, you know, if you're walking to work and you see someone, you know, trip and fall down, it's turning that into something like just really anything that could give a story or be something that can, again, just make someone escape and just think, oh, let's focus on someone else and not whatever's happening in my life. It's something like that, is focusing and seeing what happens instead of more like replaying. But I mean, replaying, there are all these great films. You could literally play movies over and over and over again in your head. But I think the magic of it comes from turning something that you see in everyday life into something else. And that's kind of where I go in my everyday life.
Well, I guess that will bring us to what we're watching today. We are, of course, watching Star Trek, the motion picture. This premiered December 7th 1979. This is, of course, the first of the Star Trek films. Like we said before, Star Trek, the original series, was canceled in 1969. But it ends up becoming the surprise hit in reruns in the 70s, and it becomes this genuine phenomenon in a way that no TV show ever had. Like we talked about, like it created conventions, and this was unprecedented. This had never happened with something before. So the powers that be were like, well, we have to bring it back.
Right, especially after Star Wars had just come out too.
Oh yeah,
So,
Star Wars definitely comes into this story.
Space movies were all the rage.
While they were doing that cartoon, and after Gene Roddenberry, others were throwing around this idea of like, could we do a feature film or maybe a second television show? And it went back and forth between, are we going to do a movie? Are we going to do a new TV show? What are we going to do? In 1976, Paramount would eventually greenlit a Star Trek movie called Planet of the Titans. This would have been like a mid-grade sci-fi romp in which the crew of the Enterprise is sent to investigate these ancient, mysterious beings known as Titans, and through time travel shenanigans, the crew end up becoming the very Titans they're looking for. At the time, they were considering up-and-coming directors Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, and Steven Spielberg to direct this movie.
All right.
There is this Star Trek Planet of the Titans lost to history.
Okay.
It almost was. The studio never settled on a version of the script they liked, so they eventually canceled the project, and then they just decided, let's just do a television revival rather than a movie. So they started doing a new Star Trek TV show. This was going to be called Star Trek Phase 2, and it was going to focus on the original Enterprise crew embarking on a second 5-year mission, along with a few new characters. And for a while, it was also going to be the flagship of a new Paramount television network, like the fourth big network. They were trying to make a new television network, and they were going to start it all with Star Trek.
They eventually got their wish, I guess.
They never did this network until years later when they eventually actually did UPN, spearheaded by Star Trek Voyager. But the show got as far as they were constructing sets and they were casting the show. This was all but a done deal. And then after the releases of a few movies called Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
May have heard of it.
You may have heard of them. Paramount decided that they needed a big budget sci-fi movie to compete, and they decided, well, that's going to be Star Trek because we have that.
Which is funny because that's Spielberg and Lucas, two of the directors they were considering.
Yeah, right. They almost had them.
The Titans.
I think during a screening of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the exec of Paramount at the time like stood up and just was like, "This could have been us." So they scrapped the TV show, and then they started rebuilding those sets they were working on into new movie sets, and then they turned the pilot script for the TV show into a feature-length script. And they eventually got Hollywood legend Robert Wise to direct the film, which lent the production a kind of gravitas. For those who don't know, Robert Wise is a 2-time Academy Award-winning director. He is most famous for directing West Side Story and The Sound of Music. Also famous for directing the sci-fi classic The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is genuinely one of the best sci-fi films of all time.
It's a very good film.
Unfortunately, the production of the movie ended up being a troubled one. It was ultimately rushed into theaters to meet a holiday deadline, so it gave it a kind of unfinished, unpolished quality, which did affect its release and its reputation. But it still was the highest grossing movie of the year, but it was also reputed to be one of the most expensive movies ever made at the time. The version we're watching is the director's cut. So back in 2000, Paramount gave Robert Wise the opportunity to finish the film finally by giving it a new edit and new visual effects to replace some of the rushed, unfinished ones that they just didn't quite get. He also wanted to do an audio remaster, but I guess they couldn't find the original audio tracks to do it, so they couldn't give it the audio remaster he wanted.
Which, I mean, how do you misplace something like that? That's still.
I don't know. What's that about? We lost him.
You
what do you mean you lost him?
Audio mix?
And And then this year in 2022, Paramount Plus surprised everyone with the release of a newly remastered 4K version of that director's cut, in which time they did find those audio tracks and they did finally give the movie the audio remaster that Robert Wise always wanted. So now, after 43 years, the movie is finally finished.
Wow. That only took 43 years.
Wow.
I've been waiting. We've all been waiting.
That's older than all of us.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that just leaves us to watch it. As we do, I guess the thing to kind of keep in our heads as we're watching it, how does this work as both a movie and a Star Trek movie? And Sean, you're a newcomer to Star Trek. This is going to be basically your first big exposure to it.
It is.
So I guess we will also talk about how this works as a newcomer to Star Trek. So on that note, we will invite all of you listening to watch with us. This used to be streaming on Paramount Plus, though as of this recording, they have pulled it off. I don't know why.
I think it's still on Netflix. Some of the Star Trek movies still are. They're up there. So
but this specific cut was a Paramount Plus exclusive, and then they pulled it. And right now, I can't find it anywhere. So, I mean, if it's not there as of the time you're listening in, I'm sure you can rent it on Amazon or something. Just make sure you watch the director's cut, not the theatrical cut. It's definitely the better version of the film. And I'll see you all out there.
Science Officer Spock. Reporting as ordered, Captain.
Please sit down. Spock, you haven't changed a bit. You're just as warm and sociable as ever.
Nor have you, Doctor, as your continued predilection for irrelevancy demonstrates.
Gentlemen, at last report, you were on Vulcan. Apparently to stay.
Yes, you were undergoing the culinary discipline.
Sit down.
If you are referring to the Kolinar, Doctor, you are correct.
Well, however it's pronounced, Mr. Spock, it's the Vulcan ritual that's supposed to purge all remaining emotions.
The Kolinar is also a discipline you broke to join us. Will you please sit down?
On Vulcan, I began sensing a consciousness from a source more powerful than I have ever encountered. Thought patterns of exactingly perfect order. I believe they emanate from the intruder. I believe it may hold my answers.
Well, isn't it lucky for you that we just happen to be heading your way?
Bones. We need him. I need him.
Then my presence is to our mutual advantage.
Any thought patterns you might sense, whether they appear to affect you personally or not, I expect immediately reported.
Of course, Captain. Is there anything else?
No.
I guess we should get into it. As always, we'll start with initial thoughts. Sean, you're the newbie to Star Trek, not a newbie to cinema. So, what are your feelings on the movie you just watched?
I like the movie, first off. It's not having seen anything Star Trek related before, like completely, like all the way through. It's an interesting place to start. I was a little bit confused by a few of the interactions between some of the characters. But overall, I mean, it's fairly explanatory. It kind of like tells its own story. But all in all, I mean, for 79, right, is like the, not CGI, but the photography that they used is phenomenal. It looks outstanding, especially in the remastered, of course, but I mean, it just looks incredible.
Yeah. I would also agree. It definitely, on a cinematic photographic sense, it's an impressive thing to look at.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
Latoya, also, you're a little more familiar with Star Trek, but this is your first time seeing this, yes?
Yes. Yeah. I was like waiting to see if I could have seen this as a kid, and sometimes, when you're too young, you can't recall sometimes, but I definitely can't recall this. And so it was fascinating to watch and try to piece together like the themes of the story, and comparing it to the series and to the movie, the lack of certain things that I was expecting, which I thought was really cool to kind of observe and take in and try to figure out why. For this story and the introduction back into these characters and why they are, with the time that we haven't gotten to experience them story-wise. So it was very interesting to dive back into these characters because it felt, and in this world and in this story, with this new kind of approach, one off. And then two, I think their introduction back into the world themselves as actors and also as characters, very much for me, the word that kept coming up was a mirror, a very big mirror of like what these characters are facing in this movie. So yeah, very fascinated to dive into it.
Tyson, I know you have a nostalgic connection with this one, so I guess for you it's going to be more watching the 4K remaster and everything for the first time. What's the impression?
Along the lines of the 4K remaster, like they make certain shots that were kind of bleak or not bleak, but like you didn't know the context. Like I didn't know, like in this shot that we're watching right now, like on Spock on Vulcan, like they make these statues pronounced, and it, like in the original, you kind of got the sense that like there are these huge kind of rock features on Vulcan that the Vulcans kind of use as their homages and their like temples or whatnot, but like the 4K aspect really helps with it, and the sound was amazing. I also have to just kind of latch on to what Latoya was talking about, like the reintroduction of the characters. I found the thing, like I was really intrigued actually of what drove Kirk back to command the Enterprise when, after, you find out after, I mean, the show ended, like there's a space that we don't know about where presumably like the crew of what was the Starship Enterprise like has gone off and done their own things, but like there's this thing that happens which the movie puts out there is like, I mean, it's a huge cloud that is all we know about is absorbing everything on it in its path and it's on its way to Earth, and somehow Kirk, I don't know how Kirk found out about that, but he becomes this kind of asshole. He's almost like an antagonist in this movie. I realize, like, and what Latoya said about people being in a mirror, like Spock has been trying to find himself and trying to find his true Vulcanness,
and McCoy's trying to like kind of like become distant, or not, he's not trying to do that, but he's like, you know, everybody's kind of living these relaxed lives, or these lives beyond the 5-year mission of the original series. And it's intriguing to see where they come from at the beginning of this movie. And there's just hints of what everybody's been doing. So it's just, and yeah, for people who have never seen the movie, there's kind of some, and also there's new characters which they introduce into the movie, which I think is a surprise, not only for the non-Star Trek, Star Trek viewer, but also the regular Star Trek viewer, to keep things interesting. So, and then just seeing, but for people who watch the original series, seeing where everybody is kind of coming from, especially the characters that you cared about, is very intriguing, and how they deal with this. I don't know. I don't know. The whole idea that Robert Wise is like this huge kind of thing. I don't know. V'ger, it's a very surreal. It's a kind of a very surreal movie. At certain points, like it bridges this line between realism and kind of dream qualities, which we were talking about before, and just the scale and the idea. It's kind of an abstract idea of what is kind of the antagonist. But yeah, again, Latoya, I think, encompasses in saying this movie is kind of like, it shows mirrors. Like, I don't know, it's fascinating. I could go on and on.
Yeah, there is no real like villain.
No,
straight up villain in this.
Exactly.
There is like antagonistic forces or conflict, but
exactly,
it's not some big baddie of the week. It'd be, you couldn't call V'ger the big bad. It's more complex.
V'ger eliminates what you consider the bad guys. The Klingons are the first ones to be introduced, and they like do what you expect Klingons to do. Is like they shoot at it to try and eliminate it, but the thing just encompasses them. Yeah,
very interesting.
They eliminate what are conceived as the antagonists from the kind of original series right off the bat. It's like, okay, what are we dealing with now? Like,
yeah, that is true. The Klingons are the classic bad guys from the TV show, and right off the bat, it's like, oh, Klingons, they're gone.
Yeah,
and it's something completely different and new.
It almost seems like very much a hook for the hardcore fans of the show. Like that classic baddie that they knew, all of a sudden is technologically inferior to whatever we're going to be facing in the movie.
Well, yeah, whatever this is.
Exactly. And as like a new fan, I was expecting, because I mean, I have like a basic knowledge, like I know what the Klingon are and everything. I was expecting to see him more on later in the film, but as it went on, as you said, it wasn't so much as like an antagonist as it is just like this, not even a being, but this thing trying to gain as much knowledge as it can. Mm-hmm. And just not having the Klingon in kind of kept me on the edge of my seat, just like, oh, what could this thing be? Like,
it's almost a force of nature they're up against.
Exactly.
And then like the conflict comes from their own like doubts about themselves and their capability of handling it, rather than like it's Thanos, you know, about to snap the universe out of existence or whatever. Aaron, this is like the third time or so you've seen this. I know you don't second time.
Yeah, ever.
I know you don't quite have the nostalgia for it that Tyson and I have, but I know you were generally I know you were doing drugs.
Yeah.
When you first watched this.
Very true. Yeah, the first time I ever saw this movie, we were sitting in my shitty apartment in Ogden. And I was on acid. And I'm convinced forever this was made by people on acid for people on acid, or any kind of psychedelic. Like looking at the visuals, and that wasn't the 4K version or anything, but even back then, like being in the state that I was watching the movie, it's like, yeah, this was made with drugs in mind, obviously, because you watch the way that V'ger is created and the way the Enterprise like flies through it and everything. It's all very trippy and very next level. And if you've ever read about or experienced something like DMT or something heavy like that, it's reminiscent of a lot of those stories of people like traveling through other dimensions or meeting like this godly otherworldly creature that was formless and huge and like indescribable in a lot of ways. And I think that's a lot of what V'ger's trying to get at. I don't know.
So now when you're watching it now.
So now, this time it was this whole trip on mythos for me, and how humans, even when there's something incomprehensible they're trying to describe, they go back to things that they know to describe it, like how we were talking about how it kind of looks like a flower, V'ger, like opening itself to the people and stuff like that. Like very fundamental things that, and universal things that everybody can kind of grasp onto, that we use to describe things that are indescribable. That was the whole trip of the movie this time for me. It was like trying to grasp onto a sense of the infinite. Yeah.
This one's always interesting for me. I feel like in some ways this is my favorite Star Trek movie. A lot of the others get much more about. The other ones get much more about the characters, I would say. Much more character focused, the sequels. Whereas this one is much more high concept. And like there is character conflict, but I wouldn't. This one I still think is much more about the ideas and like the experience of the movie. And like what we were talking about earlier, it's like this idea of trying to convey storytelling or ideas through like imagery. This movie definitely, it almost feels like a silent movie at parts, where it's like there's just not a lot of dialogue and you're just watching these big extended sequences of just like these like that cloud sequence is very much like an acid trip, and you're just seeing them react to it,
and the music's kind of helping you, influence you, and how
for
they
sure
want you to feel and think. For sure.
It's so in some ways this to me is the ultimate cinematic Star Trek, in the sense that like in that pure form of, if cinema is moving images as story, this very much is that. Like it leads just a lot up to you and to how you are just like they do. Yeah. The whole like 7-minute sequence where Kirk is just getting to the Enterprise. But it's interesting how a sequence like that works, where they're trying to communicate so much just by, they're trying to impart to you this grandeur of the concept and the scale of it. I think that the scale is the big thing with this movie. Just how big this movie does feel like an epic. Almost like a David Lean epic, kind of in space, kind of a feel, where it's just this huge scope of a thing. And so much of what they're just trying to communicate to you is just the scale of the thing. And in terms of if Star Trek is supposed to be kind of going out there and doing storytelling about what we find out there, I feel like in some ways it kind of nails that idea about what that feels like.
It does kind of feel like a big Star Trek episode that they made into a movie. So it's funny that you talked about that at first, like, and that kind of informed the movies later on. Like they're all sort of serial stories that could have been TV episodes that they just kind of blew up and then extended the script into 90-minute plot lines. You know what I mean?
I will also say too, I don't know. I mean, it's been a second since I've completely watched the original series, but I will say with the movie, they really made the ship of the Enterprise a character. Dare I say also like a character that steals the movie. Like, I mean, I feel like that's why they had that 7-minute kind of like, you start to see the close-ups of the Enterprise, kind of the inner workings of it. And I mean, clearly like the characters are very emotionally attached to the ship. And especially at the beginning of the movie, when they're going through the hardships of like trying to figure out the new mix of the fuel for the warp drive and figure out the intricacies, like, and the fact that the Enterprise has gone through an overhaul and to upgrade it to new technologies. At least for the beginning part of the movie, you see the Enterprise truly as a character, I think, as the vessel that carries these kind of big, larger than life characters around the galaxy. But then it quickly becomes, mirrored, because the Enterprise, this grand ship, becomes just a small little speck in the spectrum of V'ger, of that creature,
But V'ger still recognizes the Enterprise as an entity.
Yeah, and how Kirk handles that, that's something I've never noticed, is like, bring us 500 meters close to the heart of the ship and then take us back out to 100,000 kilometers. It's Kirk trying to like emphasize to V'ger, like using his ship, like, we are friendly. We're not going to like ram into you. We're not going to fire against you like the Klingons did at the beginning of the movie. We're like going to get close, like smell you out, and then we'll back away to show you we're not here to harm you. Like, and that's a huge thing, because Kirk is always on the defensive. Like, if they need to fire torpedoes or put up their defenses, Kirk will be the first one to fire. But that's another thing I noticed. He's like, everybody's like, no, we should be defensive. Like, is because V'ger's sending out the probes, you know, that enveloped the Klingon ships and the whole Starfleet Starbase Epsilon at the beginning of the movie. And he's like, no, we can't do anything. Like, don't scan it. Don't put up your shields. Everything could be considered a hostile act against this. He plays totally passive, which is fascinating. I don't know, because I mean, to go too deep, like, he's so aggressive and just trying to rein in his control of the Enterprise and be like, I'm the one who needs to save Earth. He knows it. That's why he like has to make he talked to Admiral Laguro, and he has to tell Decker himself at the beginning of the movie, like, I'm taking over your command. I know you've been through the refit and everything, but I know, like, I need to get my old crew back together, and I need to take over the ship. And I'm sorry this is going to break your heart, but like, this is not about you. This is about saving Earth. He gets the gravity of the situation. He knows, like, he truly is kind of a superhero in that regard. He instantly picks up on when, like, the true danger is and everything. Anyway, I could go on and on.
Interesting things there with like Kirk having to like come in being very aggressive and taking control, but then when faced with V'ger, he has to kind of be humble in terms of his approach. And also with the Enterprise and V'ger, interesting stuff with the Enterprise feels like you get these silly dog. You get these two big, they focus on like a lot on the Enterprise and then V'ger, and like one is this big technological ship, but that there's a lot of heart to it because it's like this very human thing. And then V'ger is this massive, incredible thing, but it's just technology. There's some interesting themes are playing with that technology of technology being something used to like enhance the human experience, and then in other ways where it's like this alien other thing, you know, and it's cold and lifeless. Yeah, so this is probably the most polarizing Star Trek film of them all.
Love it or hate it.
What?
Love it or hate it.
This is a very much a love it or hate it kind of movie. You know, for some people, this will kind of be in the middle of the pack.
Love it or hate it, or it's just okay. So,
right. So I guess what's the feeling about like the story, the plot, the characters, like the themes, the philosophical implications? What's the kind of our feeling about like what is they're trying to get at with this movie?
There's one that you just mentioned that I was thinking about, the whole like technology and how, you know, it's something that we use, but then it can outgrow us. And as we see here, like that's very much what's happening. Even rewatching this whole scene where they're trying to like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Beam the people
in, and how even the technology can, you know, humans don't have full control of how that could happen, you know? And then as we see the reveal of the whole film, how like humans, we seem to think that we have so much control over things that we create, but sometimes when we create something well, it can, you know, outgrow us. And with knowledge and all these things. So I was kind of just sitting back kind of thinking about the characters of how they try to gain that kind of possession, but then have to surrender to the very thing that they cannot have any possession over. If that makes sense.
You go like 10 levels deep there. That is so true.
That's crazy. I wonder if V'ger encountered the same wormhole that they hit when they tried to go to warp drive. And that's what sent it to the other side of the galaxy in the first place.
Well, they said the wormhole was created by the imbalance in the warp drive.
In the warp drive. Mm-hmm. Okay. Never mind. Strike that.
Strike that from the record.
But it does reiterate the kind of, you know, like we created something, but then we don't have control over the thing that we've created.
I mean, literally in the case with V'ger. Yeah. You know, it gets into this idea of especially when you're talking about something we created, it gets into this idea of creation. And at the end of the movie, it starts delving in this territory of what is God? That's some of the big, like, philosophical stuff that comes up. This almost presents this is partially why I personally find this movie interesting, is that it kind of it presents this notion of what an atheistic idea of God might look like. It's not some big supernatural spiritual thing. It's this kind of technology thing that we created and then had no idea that it would turn into this thing. But then this whole thing ends up being this ultimate quest for meaning. And that's why it's coming back. It's like, I have all this. What, like you said, now what? What does all this mean? What's the point? You know, and then especially with like characters like Kirk and Spock and Decker, when they're all kind of wrestling with this idea of like, what's my purpose? You know, like Kirk is not a captain anymore, but he really wants to be. Decker is supposed to be the captain, but now isn't. And he's like, well, that's what I want. But then like this woman comes back into his life, Ilea, Spock, just like all I wanted was pure logic. And he's like, well, that's why I'm here. And then he realizes in the end, it was never logic he was looking for. It was meaning. And there was nothing logical about that. And he has that moment where he laughs to himself. It's kind of some interesting ideas about just like what God is, what creation is, what life is. V'ger being this thing that's alive. It does ask you some big questions. And it kind of doesn't really answer a lot of them. And they do have that little moment at the end where it's like, what did we learn today, folks?
PSA.
I think we gave birth to a new life form, and I think we gave it the ability to learn this and this.
Based on our own weaknesses.
Based on our human
right?
weaknesses.
I was like, thanks for that.
15-minute movie right there. 15.
I bet it's a good thing to kind of leave a little seed for you to pontificate about after you watch this movie. So, yeah.
But yeah, the shots like this really summarize it. Like V'ger overtaking everything and storing it for data, with one human like outrunning everything in his little spacesuit. Like, that's it. That's us playing with the cosmos and shit we don't understand aboard a starship.
Which I have to say, I loved. I was like watching the astronauts through this whole film and watching how it constantly kept appearing. So I was like, I'm going to watch how this plays out. And just kind of like, when we were talking about scale and everything, how it had a nice recall back to it with the grand, like how with one human going against this massive thing and how small we are compared to this very big thing, the big meaning kind of thing, you know? Yeah.
V'ger is really like the universe's biggest collab at this point, because it's a probe passed from Earth to the other side of the galaxy to another species who's entirely mechanical, who gives it the ability to form a consciousness and then sends it back towards us to complete its mission. So it's just a huge album at one point. It's a huge collaboration across the galaxy.
Yeah, it's a very abstract concept. Like it's like the conflict is literally like humanity being presented with like, it's almost like the cloud in V'ger is like this analogy of just this ultimate question that's coming. It's like rather than going out there, somehow this ultimate question is coming toward Earth, and we have to real quick like, what do we do? Respond to it.
Answer it.
Well, I find it interesting too that Kirk found out about V'ger presumably through Federation, whatever. But Spock he felt it. He felt V'ger, and actually he mentions that when he mind melded with V'ger, only pure logic, which is exactly what Spock wanted to be with the Kolinahr thing, like there's a meaning there. But when you think about V'ger, like they talk about V'ger being this child, like after he's like V'ger is a child, it's kind of like, I mean, what technology and Matrix, man, like there's only a certain point to which androids or mechanics can go. And I find it fascinating that V'ger, and this is like after me watching it multiple times, that V'ger picks Ilea, a Deltan who...
It's an empath.
an empath, the way they say hello is by having sex, this very intimate interconnection of feeling, of emotion, all the things that, like, we were kind of making fun of it once they made that connection, like that V just needed to kind of get laid, like it kind of like, Jess, you need to experience this other kind of like other side of experience. Like there was no empathy when V'ger is sending out these probes, is taking over. Like you can kind of like watching it. V'ger is kind of innocent. It is a child. It's just trying to take in knowledge. It's following its directive of learn all that is knowable. So it's learned everything, but it hasn't felt or experienced all of what it, I don't know, from at least a human perspective, we experience. And his creator, Voyager's creator, was a human. And I think that's the missing part of his V'ger's. I keep on using his. I shouldn't use like gender descriptive terms, but like, because V'ger it's a fucking satellite. You know what I mean? But like, it's become sentient. And
made by NASA.
I just was watching them. Like, it's fascinating that V'ger decided to take Ilea, the Deltan, the being that has not really been expounded upon. I'm sure they created it for a story-specific purpose for the script, this being that comes from a society of true feeling and true kind of sensitivity and sensuality. And that's the thing that V'ger is like trying to like figure out, is that connection of a human quality, the capability to leap beyond logic. Like,
I mean, they do loop it back to like, it's like we gave birth to a baby. And I was like, I kind of went, huh?
People have speculated. I thought my naive brain, like, oh, is this the birth of the Borg? Like the machine aspect and the human aspect, like
that has come up in the.
But they disproved that it's not.
That has come up in like the extended canon.
There's a lot of like humans trumping up their own importance in there too. Like this machine couldn't achieve true consciousness until it mated with a human being.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then we get into the kinky stuff, like Decker.
Oh yeah, I mean yeah, you commented, Sean, like especially in that end sequence when they're at the satellite, and like it's like wanting connection.
It really is.
And the lights are like suddenly going like a throbbing red.
The hair blowing up. Like,
it's just there's such a sexual undertone to just honestly most of the movie.
Yeah, I agree.
And especially towards that last 15-ish, 20 minutes, once they actually get to V'ger and they're just kind of like walking out there, and then once they kind of find out it's the Voyager, it just hits home. Like it's just with the music, the lighting, just everything, just boom. It's kind of in your face.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even the first shot where we see that little, what do you call it? Little orb thing go into...
The little pod?
Yeah, the
little
pod.
shuttle pod going into the
zooms into it, and I just kind of was like, huh.
Just like any other man.
Not to mention all the bromance between Kirk and Bones, Kirk and Spock. Like I mean, it's been a joke between me and Jaron. Like, damn it, Bones, I need you. Badly. Like,
just this sensual handshake.
And Shatner does not break that gaze. Like he needs DeForest Kelly in that moment. He needs Leonard Nimoy in that moment. He's just like, attach your forearm to mine now. Like,
if I can build on that real quick. So like gonna go back to character here for a second, and for Shatner and Kirk in particular, where it's him and Bones when Bones first gets beamed aboard, and it's that handshake, and he's like, I need you. Like, he has the humility to say, like, oh, yeah, I need your help. Whereas opposed to the young kid that took his position in, Decker. Yeah. He can't show that. Like, he doesn't want to be upstaged. Mm-hmm. And I think the resolve that came from that is unsatisfying. Is it really just kind of glosses over how Kirk just is kind of like, oh, yeah, like, now it's okay. Like when they're going out and he says, I want to come to V'ger with you. And it just, I don't know, it left like I don't want to say like a climax, but like there just needed to be some more resolution in that.
It doesn't fully resolve the Decker Kirk.
Exactly, yeah, because it was almost like as if, not as if, they were butting heads throughout 90% of the film, 85% of the film. And it just, boom, it's done. I think that was part of like the character arc didn't quite make sense.
Sure. You did get a little bit of closure in Decker, like recognizing Kirk as the captain for the situation. He's like, he kind of just succumbs to the chain of command at a certain point, and you see him like just start recognizing him. He starts calling him captain. And the hostility goes away, and that's about all the resolution that you get, I feel like. But yeah.
Well, and I think that what's the female's name? Aaliyah. I think when we start to try to fight for somebody else, other kind of minimal storylines, unfortunately, get minimized because of the sake of trying to, like, something's a little bit higher stake in the story. And I think trying to see if they can get her back for him, specifically for Decker, who's like invested more so than he is with Kirk, you know. I think the story, I agree with you, Sean. And also I think like sometimes in storytelling, for some reason, they minimize those kinds of things that they set up nicely for some other kind of more higher staked storyline.
Exactly. And that ends up becoming the resolution to the entire film itself, is that V'ger and Decker eventually, you know, become, I guess, one.
This new being.
And which is weird, but it's like, I don't know.
That's interesting. I think actually now hearing that, because Decker has not been in the original series, nor is Aaliyah. These are characters created specifically for the original picture. And I wonder if it would have been different if one of the characters from the original crew was like the Decker character, like
Sulu or something.
Yes, which actually comes into play. Like, I feel like they got with the next 3 movies, actually, because it becomes about Spock and losing Spock and somebody. But because these characters, like, you only get a finite time to empathize with them, but because you're so attached to the original crew and Kirk and Spock and McCoy, and you're so intrigued about where they've been, you have a limit to the empathy. And I find that fascinating for somebody who doesn't know about the Star Trek kind of thing, because I was trying to figure out that too. Why do I love this movie and I love what it tries to say, but yeah, like there's a kind of a lack of depth with Decker and Aaliyah, who end up becoming essential to the film. I find it fascinating. They're the ones who, like, it's quickly, like, they introduce them and then they're like, their problem is resolved at the end of it. But you still have the crew of the Enterprise. You still have all the characters and people that you love. You have the ship, like, and they're just going on to their next mission. I don't know.
Well, it's probably worthwhile to mention that so the characters of Decker and Aaliyah are holdovers from the Star Trek Phase 2 television series they were going to do. When they had like the pilot. So the pilot episode was called In Thy Image, and it was essentially this episode or this idea. But they were going to set up these new regular television series characters of Decker was going to come in as the new first officer, and Aaliyah was going to come in as this empath, you know, who has a past with Decker. So they're kind of holdovers from it. And then it's like them trying to kind of find this new importance or how they're going to put them in the movie. It is also probably worth mentioning that there was a third character that they had created for the television show named Zahn. And because originally Leonard Nimoy was not going to come back and do the new TV show. So they created a new character called Zahn, who was this new young Vulcan character who's going to be like a replacement for Spock. And he was going to be an inverse of Spock, whereas Spock was a half Vulcan, half human who was always trying to repress his human side. This character Zahn was going to be a full Vulcan and had trouble relating to humans, so he was trying to open himself up to humans to understand how to, someone who was just so repressed and was trying to artificially open themselves up to humans to understand what emotions were. But he got cut from this. They did cast the actor, David Gautreaux, I believe. He ends up playing the Epsilon 9 commander, but he was going to be a character, like an actual character on the show.
He's very striking in that cameo at Epsilon 9, I will say.
brought it, even though his part was greatly reduced.
Greatly reduced. Lead to background.
Yeah.
I heard Adrian Brody was supposed to be like this huge part in Thin Red Line, and they cut out like 90% of the footage that he was in. He only ended up being like a 10% like cameo. It's shit like that in the movie industry. It's like you think you're gonna be this huge part of the film, and it's like
Absolute
nope,
punch in the gut.
5 seconds. Like,
But yeah, Tyson, I think you're right. I think you're onto something. That if the V'ger Union had been with someone from the original crew, it would have held a lot more weight.
yeah.
It definitely would have, because with Decker, as soon as Kirk comes on and usurps command, not knowing that Decker is not from the original series, zero hesitation on my part. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I get to see Shatner as Kirk and command of the Enterprise. Like, there's no emotional weight whatsoever in having Decker booted from command that early. That just nothing.
It would have been interesting maybe if they kind of set up initially Decker overseeing the refit or whatever, or like hearing that like you are going to be sent out to go do this, and then Kirk shows up, and
Exactly.
so you latch on to Decker real quick as this false protagonist, and then this other guy's not here. Yeah, and I think it also would have helped if they had found a full resolution for the Decker story, especially like because they set up the motivation that like there's this back and forth between Kirk and Decker, and eventually Decker decides to join V'ger, and he has the line. The closest they have to a resolution is, "Jim, I want this. As much as you wanted the Enterprise, I want this." And it's like if they had built up a little bit as to why Decker might necessarily, if there was something to his character where it's like maybe it's not the Enterprise he's interested in, maybe it's something else, and then it's him realizing, yeah, the Enterprise was only ever a stand-in for what I really wanted, and now this situation is kind of telling me what I want. Whereas with Kirk, it's like Kirk genuinely loves the Enterprise, and that's what he wants.
Do you think? I feel like what they try to propose in the movie is that Ilea is what Decker truly wants. Which he gets supplanted by Kirk, so his first dream is crushed. But then this long lost love from a past mission comes back, and which Ilea becomes this weird thing actually when she gets abducted and turned into a probe. But yet Decker I think understands that it's no longer Ilea. But for whatever reason, Ilea's probe is empathetic towards Decker. It's like, oh, I remember you from this intimate experience we had.
That's a whole trip too. The 3D printed Ilea probe.
Yeah,
but like memories and thoughts and potentially feelings too.
Is that what allows Decker to be like, okay, I'm okay with because I love Ilea and this pro. I mean, I don't know.
I mean,
there's some.
I think.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think it is, but also, like, it's almost not lost. It's not lost, but it's not. It doesn't seem as serious when she gets abducted.
Yeah,
like watching them, like I get, Kirk say like soldiering on. He's the captain. He's got to put on that brave face. Everyone else just is like, oh, okay. And she's gone. All right, let's go.
Even Decker himself.
Exactly. There's nothing there.
This is how I define a warranted.
Well,
back to business.
Okay, all right,
the woman I love more than anything.
Get it done. All right. And it's just, there's, like, I get, like, you can tell, like, because, throughout the film, there are weird prolonged gazes, etc. But, just, yeah, when she disappears, just nothing. Mm-hmm. And I wish it was played a little bit differently or something prolonged like a little bit more. Just to kind of nudge it home a little bit more than it was, but in the end, it has the same resolution, as it would if that was in there.
But I agree, though. I think that I forgot about that until you met. I was like, oh yeah, that really would have helped. I think us care more about the both of them, and it would actually help the ending of the film. I mean, it's still beautiful, and also just it is important for audience members to be invested in these characters and invested as much as these characters are with each other. And if that's not happening, then the ending doesn't feel like it reaches the full potential that it can have,
I think they were really banking on just, we still got the original, like, here's the original Star Trek crew. Like, they are the ones who end up, I mean, like, nothing has changed with them other than that they've been reunited. Yeah. And the rest of the movies that they make kind of, and they get, I mean, I'm biased. I love this original movie. It's one of my favorites, but they get progressively better and really kind of like talking about the crew, which is what everybody wants. I feel like that's what they could have made it, gone out on a chance. I feel like maybe producers or somebody wasn't willing to take the chance of like truly fleshing out Decker and Ilea, and like, so they had to keep it contained within the storyline spectrum of the original crew: Uhuru, Spock, Scotty, you know, all those guys. And then they get that with, I mean, I love the next 4 movies, 2, 3, 4, or excuse me, yeah, the next 3, 2, 3, and 4 were like,
not so much 5.
Not so much 5. They kind of ride off a little bit of 2, 3, and 4, but
they're definitely a little different. I almost feel like this is Star Trek the movie, and the others are the Star Trek movies, if that makes any sense. Like, it's a different kind of a thing with the other movies. They feel like a film franchise where you're getting these continuing voyages with this crew. This feels like this kind of event thing that's happening. I almost feel like with the Decker and Ilea stuff, you know how in the beginning you get the scene of V'ger attacking the Klingons or whatever, and it kind of sets up this, and then you get this scene with Spock on Vulcan that kind of sets up his thing, and then he comes into it later. It would have been interesting if maybe then after that there was a scene setting up some of the Decker Ilea stuff as these kind of initial things, and then you get the scene with like Kirk coming in, who kind of usurps everything. So just to give you at least something to latch onto those two characters.
Exactly.
Because I think in terms of the characters, the story that does work really well in this is the Spock story.
Oh, yeah.
oh yeah.
His whole journey that he goes on in this story that kind of parallels the V'ger story. Once Spock shows up, he kind of becomes the heart and soul of the whole movie. The scene where he's like sitting there there's that epic tracking panning shot where it's like showing everyone on the bridge as they're kind of getting to the heart of V'ger, and then it just comes to Spock, and he's just, and then Kirk's like, "Hey, Spock," and then Spock turns around, he's crying, and he's like, I weep for V'ger like I would a brother." He's empathizing. The logical one is empathizing so hard with what's going on and this thing that's going on, and then this idea that he thought what he wanted was logic, and in the end what he walks away with is meaning, and that's what he was looking for. It kind of crystallizes a bit with Kirk. It doesn't quite get there with Decker. They're all on a similar kind of a thing, this idea of like they're all wanting this and they all end up with this. Kirk I think is the only one who kind of ends up with what he wanted with in the first place, the Enterprise, but it becomes more about, I think Kirk was like, didn't realize how much of it was his own ego. Yeah. And by the end, it was the realization of it's the people that I'm with. And that's the bigger picture is what I really care about. It's not about me, but he was kind of motivated by himself. Decker, it's a little, he wants to be the captain, I guess, and maybe there was this other meaning in life that he wanted more, which is like Ilea, which kind of represents this bigger thing. But then Spock is this, he thought he wanted logic and he ended up getting meaning. That's the one that works the best, I think.
It is, because Spock is set up. You like on Vulcan at the beginning, they're doing, I'm not entirely sure what the necklace,
Kolinar ceremony to purge all the logic.
Yeah, but they set it up where it's like he stops them from placing whatever it is on him, and they say, "Oh, this is like you're missing this, or you have this connection to something," and it's set up to where he appears back, and he goes through the entire story arc of having to connect with freaking V'ger, and it's more complete. Mm-hmm. It makes so much more sense than most of the other story arcs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find it fascinating too when he first comes back. He's like, everybody's so emotionally moved on the Star Trek bridge, like Uhuru, everybody's like, oh, it's Spock, everybody's Spock. And he's so kind of like, I feel like because he rejected Kolinar, because he probably had an epiphany. He had this emotional epiphany, not only because of, I don't know, V'ger, he's probably feeling V'ger, but when he comes back, he's so emotionally disconnected. Like, it's how we all feel, Mr. Spock. And he's like, Captain. And he's just like straight to business. I feel like that's his most human aspect. He's like denying the emotions that he knows he feels towards everybody. He's like, I just got to dive into work because I just failed the Kolinar despot or whatever. And everybody wants to talk about it. And he's just like, nope. But then his arc is that he becomes one with V'ger. He's the one who mind melds and he cries. And yeah, it's always subtly about Spock. That's like my, my conspiracy theory. Like, Shatner's great, everybody's great, but it's Spock. Like, he's one of the coolest, most what an original, clever idea for an alien race of they're all about purging emotion, and they are driven by whatever makes most logical sense. But this particular character is half human, half Vulcan. So it has to deal with both of those. So it is being human, I think. Like, he's the most human character. Like, and they really embrace that idea, I think, in the next 3 movies.
I feel like it's a lot of input from Leonard Nimoy too. Specifically, like the Spock character, like he brought so much to it that he was probably collaborating a lot with the writers on that character and his story. Because like his character, as opposed to everybody else's, is like a desperado. He's very much just doing his own shit through this entire movie. He launches himself in a little tiny spacesuit into the center of V'ger, and he Vulcan neck pinches a crewman to do it. Like he's just all about his own agenda.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
Yeah, that what you just said, Tyson, with Kirk falling behind with his friend. Kirk's story is definitely like his moment crystallizes the same moment as Spock. It's much earlier than the V'ger thing. It's when Spock is in sickbay and he's telling what happened when he went into V'ger, and he's passing out and he's like, I should have known. And Kirk's like, should have known what? Tell me. And then there's that moment where he just takes Kirk's hand. He's like, this simple feeling is beyond V'ger's comprehension. No meaning, no hope. And there's that moment where Kirk looks at him and he totally is like, gets it, and he clasps with him. And it's like, for Spock,
I need you.
Yes.
I need you. And that's why Kirk, he
loses his ego in that moment. It becomes all about Spock and everyone.
Uhuru says at the moment, like, because there's the ensign. He's like, blah, blah, blah. He's like, ensign, you don't understand. Our chances of surviving whatever the fuck is coming at us is 200 times better than what it was before. Because Kirk has this ability. Kirk is a superhero. I don't know. Like, they all have their powers in a certain way. But like Latoya said, that this, for whatever reason, and this is one of the most ethereal, kind of surreal Star Treks out of the whole
for sure it is
movie franchise. What Latoya said of putting up a mirror, like, this is really mirror-like for all the characters, and it justifies why they come back to the Enterprise, and why the Enterprise has that huge, grand, 7-minute long sequence of, like, something about the ship, something about their time together, what draws them back to, like, space and exploration, and trying to, I don't know.
So with all this in mind, I feel like that captures a lot of kind of like what's going on in the story and everything. I also do think just the idea that the Voyager satellite is what this all ends up being is such a fun idea. Just this idea of something we shoot out there that comes back. Just go learn stuff. I'm back. Oh shit.
And I'm here to learn you.
And now it's trying to destroy everything.
So with all that, like all the story, all the themes and stuff, how do we feel about like the filmmaking at hand in terms of telling this story? Like, what works about it, what doesn't work about it, the directing, the editing, cinematography, the special effects, the music. There's so much going on in terms of the filmmaking in this. How do we feel like the filmmaking does in conveying all this to the audience?
7 out of 10.
Seven out of 10.
You know, some of the cuts are a little jarring. Some of the stories could have been a bit more fleshed out, as we talked about. Maybe some of the choices could have been a bit more clear as to what they were trying to convey. But I'm with Tyson. I do love this movie from a nostalgic perspective. Like, it's glorious. But yeah, it could have done some things a little bit better.
If I'm going strictly as a newcomer, just based on watching a film, giving it a grade, if I'm taking everything into account, I may get some hate from this side of the room.
Please.
I'm giving it a solid 5 out of 10. If I take the character art development out of it, it's probably a good 6.5 or 7. I agree. Like, some of the cuts, and this is getting really nitpicky, some of the cuts are jarring, and a lot of there's some shots that don't match from edit to edit. There's slightly off, they're in slightly different positions. Just it's slightly like jarring, really. And then with the cinematography aspect, a lot of the times, and I get a lot of this is, you know, done in post, a lot of the special effects are edited in. A lot of the lighting didn't match what was happening on screen, and it kind of took me out of it more. Like when you get like the warp drive and stuff flashing, you don't see that blue or like that white pulsing on the actors' faces. You don't see a ton of it on the walls. You see a little bit, but there are these points where it's just nothing. It's just, you know, that white light that's coming from one of the lights that's just off camera. And it's just slightly jarring to see, like, this is pulsing, this is spinning around, it's doing all this crazy stuff. His face, he's standing 2 feet away from it, is just nothing. And there's nothing,
just a white light on
blocking his face. Yeah. It's stuff like that where it's like, and I get, again, it's the 70s. Like, they're not nearly as, not to say they weren't perfectionists, they're not.
I didn't have the capability.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff you see now, and now it could honestly very easily be fixed in post. You could go back and add that in. But it's like, and then like, if you go into the sound mix, it's coming from, I don't know what the original theatrical release was like, there's sometimes where it felt like there's almost no room tone. So it's going from dialogue, room tone, spaceship noises, whatever you want to call it, into just silence. That for me was a little bit jarring to listen to, because you're going from to just dead, just nothing. And those are like my biggest critiques. Like, again, like nitpicky, but it's definitely a good, like, I'd watch it again. I would definitely watch it again, and I didn't enjoy it. But for me, it's just nitpicky things that could have been fixed that just weren't almost.
I would agree. Like, when I talk about this being, like, in many ways it's my favorite, it's more for the ambition. I think this movie has a lot of ambition. Like, I feel like they fucking go for it in this movie. And maybe in some ways all the technology isn't quite there to do it. But for what they do accomplish, it is very impressive. Because there are, I think, visual effects sequences in this film that are very impressive for the time. It's like, yeah, this still looks really good, what they're trying to do. It's just that does it all come together as the whole? Maybe not always. Because I think it's a very ambitious film that even with this being the finished version, it still has its flaws. I wouldn't call it a failure, but it's almost like it's got glorious flaws. You know, despite this, it still makes for a very interesting viewing in the sense that I don't think you would not see this kind of movie made now. Like, the movie that had the biggest budget for the year, like, and for like some big blockbuster, there is no way anyone would make this movie now. Which is kind of a shame, because it's like it is kind of interesting that it's about like these ideas, and I feel like I like some of the slow shots. There's so much is communicated visually in this movie, and it's just kind of up to you just kind of experience the movie as you're just kind of going with it. and it'll just kind of let you process the ideas. I don't think but they wouldn't do that now. But so it's almost like you're never going to see this kind of movie again. But it definitely has its flaws.
Something I thought about it too is that the hard thing that has going against it is that it's all set kind of technically in one location. 3/4 of the movie is just them moving further and further into V'ger, which at first you're like, oh, it's amazing. And well, I think they perpetually, like, everything about V'ger is actually very exciting. Like, because it starts out as a cloud, but then there's a spaceship. But then there's the inner workings of the spaceship, but then you get at the heart of the spaceship, which is actually a very simple craft. It's Voyager. But the thing, I mean, they sped up from the original movie that I bought on VHS of the original movie, the moving through Voyager, like all the like trippy like cloud sequences were very slow compared to this. They sped those up. But even still, I was kind of like, they're stuck in one location. And it is amazing. I think they do their best, but it's like, and then they go to the reactions of and various stuff happens. Like the probe shows up, the pillar of light, and Ilea gets taken, and they had the outside, those kind of spice the things up, but it's still kind of like Heart of Darkness almost. Like you're stuck just going down one jungle river and try and keep it exciting. But I mean, but again, I don't know. I don't know how much they got inspiration from Stanley Kubrick in 2001, but it's definitely like going through the clouds of Jupiter. Like we're watching the sequence when they're first going through V'ger, and V'ger's kind of like this organic. I mean, the machinery really emphasizes how organic it is, but I always, for some reason, think of like jellyfish and the abyss and like this amphibian, or not amphibian, but aquatic, like, you know, luminescent kind of like the weird shit that's at the bottom of the sea, and they're going through this mass expanse of clouds and lights and I'm just watching what you said about Sean about the lighting. Like, it's very dark compared to the original series. This is very dark lighting. Like, even in, I don't know, in the original series, even in the dark moments, they still had, like, their bridge is just like the painting they had on the set was very kind of a light gray. This is all very macabre. Dare I say macabre, like just more like, oh, you're in space, so we have dark shadows and dark lighting on the bridge. Like, look how dark it is. Like, and it might be because they're in the middle of this cloud. There's no exposure to the sun. They're not in, you know, the light of the solar system or whatever, which kind of, I don't know, they're just something kind of heavy or dark with the whole, very, like, kind of like being in a submarine or something. Like, it feels kind of almost underwater, and like all the crew and their apprehension of being in the middle of this cloud, it feels very kind of like they're on a submarine almost.
I also love how like Kirk looks like it's someone like farted.
Just something lingering around.
His stank face.
He was like,
what was that?
See,
Thank you. Off the bridge. No.
I'm sorry. I was like looking at him, and he had this. He
really
like,
does. But Tyson, to build on your point, like, yeah, they're in space, but they're flying through V'ger, and it's this cloud, and it's these vibrant colors, like your greens, your pinks, your blues, like they're bright. But and going back and watching a couple of these shots, the lighting doesn't match. It's going to be blue in the actors, it's going to be green outside, it's that, and that light should be exactly, it should be shining a little bit through, it should be showing at least a little bit on the actors' faces and brightening up that bridge. It shouldn't, I don't think, be that dark. And with it this dark, you would expect, well, there's actually one there. I didn't notice a lot of Rembrandt lighting, which is getting very technical. I don't know if y'all know Rembrandt. He had that little triangle of light on the cheek. It's a very dramatic light. And I think if you're going for something like this dark, especially in that part right there, right when they break through the cloud and they see V'ger as it is, or start to see V'ger as it is, it should be more dramatic. Because now it's honestly brighter than it was when they were flying through the clouds. It's something like that where it's like just off and not quite as bright as it should be, or as dramatic as it should be.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to hear that, because it's very true. It's interesting because I like the darkness in the film. And also, I think there's a missed opportunity for that moment to make the world go into that brightness and progressively get brighter when they get to the very source, to let us know, like, we're about to, storytelling wise, like, about to go into the very thing that they've been, like, searching for, prepare, bring us into a different level in the story.
They could have gone full cosmic horror there, traveling through V'ger. Instead of just the deep blues, they could have gone all the colors,
Yeah.
Like they did during the
on
Wormhole.
Yeah.
Where it's
And when
all
the pro
that color.
comes on, that pillar of light, and that bright light is shining on all the
Exactly.
crew members. That's probably the best.
See, and then you go from that into
Lighting, I think.
here, boom, get that dramatic switch, and you can get that feeling of, oh, this is very different than what they were expecting, or just something that emphasizes, oh my gosh, the scale of this situation.
Yeah, it would have been really, really cool. I mean, I think for the time and for the lack of time that they had to put all this together, it's a very impressive film, I would have to say. Knowing that they had to kind of put things together quickly at the time, and then coming back as revamping it and stuff. But even then, I'm actually sitting back and just very impressed by what they were able to do and create with the lack of what we have now. It's pretty fantastic, and I do think it holds up pretty well.
Yeah, certainly some of the special effects stuff. That wormhole sequence is pretty impressive. That's all photographic effects. That there's no CGI or anything, and
that boggles my mind, because it looks like a CGI kind of
it's a wild sequence.
It's crazy.
I can see how they can make that in just photographic terms.
But even the model work in this, just this alone, where they're flying past V'ger, is just incredible.
Yeah,
it really gives you a sense of scale.
It really does. It's in the fight against this thing, we are a fucking speck. This thing, we don't know what it is. It could destroy us with in a blink of an eye. It's just phenomenal to see that model work done.
It's like when you watch The Lord of the Rings, and so much of why that movie works and feels grounded in reality is how much of it is this in-camera model work they're still doing, and they're enhancing it with computer effects. And this movie, it's the same kind of a thing. It's it really lends this kind of the whole sequence showing the Enterprise model in super detail, and then contrasting that with V'ger. But there's so much detail. Everything feels so big and so weighty. So you feel there is an appropriate, where I feel like nowadays, if they were to make this kind of movie, things would be zipping around, and it would feel just so airy, and it's
Almost
hey, whatever,
too
cool.
much. Almost too much happening at once, instead of sitting back and realizing the actual scale of what this is.
What all this is.
I would say this movie almost does a better job of it than even Lord of the Rings did. Because you can tell, my mind always goes to the shots in Lord of the Rings where Isengard is being flooded, and you can kind of see that if you really look at it, it's these are really tiny models and a little bit of water, and they're creating the shot. But this, there's none of that. You really just think you're looking at something that's humongous compared to a really teeny tiny Enterprise. And kudos to them for doing that in 1979.
All the exterior space shots are very impressive. And even though there are a few visual effects shots in here that are redone because they didn't have time to finish them, more or less this is still the original film and the original just photographic effects. 90% of it's still just the original stuff. And it holds up. And a lot of the visual effects in that they really convey this. If Star Trek, again, is supposed to be this going out there, the space odyssey and Alien, and just how big that feels. Like space and everything in this movie feels huge. You know, it's not just we're zipping to Endor real quick. You know, it's like they don't even go that far from Earth. You know, they just say like it's like a day away, and like they leave the solar system and they go to warp for a bit and then they hit it. It still just feels like this massive expanse and stuff they have to do. That really helps. Like so much of this movie is conveyed just through stuff like that, scale, visual effects, like, and it's not as, they're not telling you as much of what you're supposed to feel. Even if some of these sequences do go a bit long, probably one of the biggest points of criticism this movie gets is the pacing. It's sometimes referred to as Star Trek the slow motion picture or Star Trek the motionless picture. I would agree to a point, but I also think there is something about the kind of storytelling. And Tyson, you did mention 2001: A Space Odyssey. That certainly for this movie was an influence.
It feels like that.
It absolutely
I was just thinking
was.
about it close to First Contact because that's fairly gritty, but this is kind of the most stark interpretation of the franchise that I've seen. Like you look at it's like just this sequence. I mean, not to mention like it's all dark lighting and like I wonder if they were really worried about making it like be serious, having people take Star Trek seriously in a different light than they had in the TV series. But like, I don't know. And you're a much more bigger, knowledgeable person with the Star Trek franchise than I. And I'm sure there's a couple episodes where it's like very dark and macabre. But for the movies, like this is kind of like, yeah, again, the most kind of surreal and ethereal and dark, dare I say, kind of. Like,
yeah, it's definitely in a class of its own. It's its own unique thing compared to the rest of the Star Trek movies.
Yeah,
generally speaking.
Yeah, I mean, well, not to mention just the veneer of it, their uniforms and like the whole design of the Enterprise. It's very 1979. You don't see these uniforms again, I don't think.
No, this is the only time you ever see these uniforms in this film.
Thank God. Like, I love these like one-piece blue. Like, I'm like, when I first watched this movie, I'm like, I try to make sense of them. Like, I don't like them. Like, I generally don't like them. I can see the guys' bulges. Like,
I was questioning the like costume choice. It almost looks like it's one piece. And the fact that the pants go over their shoes is fucking psychotic. Like, if you look at it, you can't see where, like, the separation of the pants and shoes. It goes over their shoes.
Yeah. Exactly. Where does it end?
It doesn't end. And unless they have grips on the bottom of the shoes, I know I would eat shit. The first time I took a step in that space up, I'd fall on my face.
It's all kind of really casual, too. Yeah. In a lot of scenes, like even the Admiralty. Like, are you wearing basically just a tunic?
That's what I thought when they walked onto V'ger. Yeah. I was so confused by the random outfit change.
What was with their away uniforms?
Their little jackets or whatever they were wearing.
We're going to dress as the plebeians of the universe to assure ourselves.
Well, there's like one particular shot where someone was wearing like the tan looking one, and I literally looked over and I was like, are they naked? Because the lighting was funky, and I was like, what is going on? Oh, no, they're in clothes.
Yeah.
So weird.
The whole crew shot when Kirk and the whole like higher command are like telling them what V'ger is. I'm like, look, it's a sea of just like brown,
beige. There's zero colors in there. I was honestly
upholstery too. I'm like, this is so 70s. Oh my god, this is so 70s.
I was excited to see the red jackets. The famous Star Trek.
They're the best
whoever
uniforms,
wears
man.
a red jacket dies. I was excited to see that.
Not this movie.
But beige, blues, whites, just
I wonder
colors.
I wonder if my guess is to some degree, because the 60s show, by contrast, is so colorful. There's the gold uniform, there's the blue uniform, there's the red uniform, and there's like swaths of purple and green across the walls. And I wonder if this was their attempt to try to
Christopher Nolan it?
Or decampify it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's going to be more realistic, and they're going to be wearing like, I don't know, like more muted colors, and they're astronauts. Yeah, I wonder if that like it maybe if it's an overcompensation of trying.
Yeah, and knowing because I've seen clips and stuff from the series and stuff, and it is bright. And then at certain shots in this, it almost felt like it was trying to be noir. Where there was one shot, I can't remember. I think it was when it was Shatner and McCoy. So Kirk and McCoy, I don't remember where they were. But he had, or no, it was Decker. It was when they were talking to Decker. And he had this weird slash across his face of shadow. And there were just these little motifs that were just like, there's this weird lighting, and I don't know why it would be here unless it's to emphasize something. And this gives me characteristics of noir, where it's trying to take it, not dark, but like it's trying to emphasize stuff with the use of lighting and shadows. And it's this weird mixture of dark and light. Like it's almost shot with two lights and no fill. Like it's got a key light which hits the face, and no fill light that kind of fills in the shadow. It's just this weird kind of mixture of in between.
It's interesting. Like Toy and I were talking like during the movie, they kind of do stuff like that in the TV show, but with color and shadows. And it just feels like for this movie, they kind of do some of the same stuff. They just strip away all the color.
Yeah, it becomes more about shades than colors.
Yes. Right. I think in some aspects it works, and then at some aspects it doesn't work. It gives it a kind of gravitas, but I think sometimes there are shots where like the colors just all fade into the background,
like that.
Right.
Except for Shatner, because he's in white and everything else is gray.
Right. So so
you focus on him.
I mean, like his first uniform he wears is white and gray. And
It
I
is.
have a theory about that. It's like he puts on this uniform so he's like a swan. Like he's gonna come in and take everything over. He's got to have like this peacock kind of like quality to him. So he's wearing a flashy uniform, and also it's just Shatner, and I'm sure he's like, I want to look.
He wants to be
the
front and
center
center
of the show.
Yeah.
It's Star Trek friend. I don't know if that.
I think it would be remiss if we did not talk about the music.
Oh yeah.
That I think is a huge highlight of the film, and I feel like so much of the heavy lifting of this movie is that Jerry Goldsmith's score, and especially communicating like this, also the scale, just huge epic nature of what it is you're watching, and also like the beauty and like the feeling, just the otherworldly mystery of it all. The score just is on point, I think, throughout the entire film.
It's a character too, just as much as the Enterprise or V'ger.
Yes, especially the synth. Oh.
It like shakes you.
I think the score is what carries you through a lot of those scale shots that is just slow movement. Because it's building and building, and then it finally the ship gets to where it needs to go, and it's this huge crescendo of just sound, and it's fantastic. It is such a good score.
Yeah.
Without the music, it would just be so boring.
It really would.
Oh, the score goes such a way. Like this is if I had like my, we've been talking at work, Sean, at Utah Symphony about if we could do a film and concert, what we could do. And my just personal, what I would love to see is this movie, because the score is such a huge part of the experience. So hearing this done live with the visuals, for me, would be amazing.
I very much agree with you after seeing this. I think it would be such a great time to watch them play this live. It would be incredible.
Find some guy to play that synth or whatever it is.
Oh, just something.
Wow, like live through the halls of Ravenel.
Would be incredible.
Well, it's cool because I like the introduction of the music being a character. The theme, like, and even before, it was like with the shot of the stars at the very, very beginning, the overture told us that, the music is going to be very important character in this whole story, especially since it's it does move slow and more image based and stuff like that. The music really is, yeah, like what Aaron said, an added character to the story. And it does give us that like something big is happening, something big is coming. And like, I just think it's stunning.
So I'd like to get Jill's opinion on, because one of my friends, he's seen the movie, he's a Star Trek fan. He attributed the space shots and the ships and everything that are flying through space, and then the shots of the stars like you have at the beginning during the overture, as just boring, basic rip-offs of Star Wars. Which, one, it's weird because they're not quite the same. But one, it's also 1979. What are you going to do that's going to be horribly different than anything else that you've seen at that point? So I just kind of want to get y'all's opinion on what you think about it, or if it could have been different.
I wouldn't say rip off so much as just riding the wave, right? Yeah. But like even Star Wars is derivative of what Star Trek brought to the table 10 years before. The 60s show. Right? Like
George Lucas has talked about
and
it.
Kubrick. Didn't Space Odyssey...
That was, 68. That was 68. Like a whole decade before this.
Before Star Trek and Star
Space
Wars?
Odyssey. I mean, Space Odyssey came out during the 60s run of the show. It was like 68 when...
But I'm talking about Star Wars.
Star Wars was 77.
So, okay. So there's this basis, I feel like Star Trek or Star Wars is kind of like, I mean... they're not rip-offs, I don't think. Like, they just encompass, they definitely utilize, I think, similar tricks and effects for portraying space. But I feel like, I mean, everybody has their own special bent with what they're trying to do with space. And even with Star Trek, which was represented in a certain way through the TV show, they wanted to do something different for the movie, obviously. Star Wars is a bit more pulpy. I would compare it actually more to the original series of Star Trek, where it's more light, colorful. Like it's macabre in its own way. Like Star Wars is a brilliant entertainment of like technology and fantasy and kind of like multiple aspects.
But even Star Wars
then there's 2001: Space Odyssey, and it's like super realistic and gritty and like. You know, like, and they take on a certain realistic aspect of space, which actually is something I was going to mention with this. I feel like the transporter stuff, like, they really try and bring in the horrors of, like, we have, like, exceeded technology. We have, like, great technology, but there's still dangers. Like, transporting is still kind of dicey. Like, we have spacesuits. People have to go out in spacesuits to do stuff, and there's still shit that can happen when you're in your spacesuit. Anyway, that's a digression, but to go back to what Sean asked, like, I think it's dependent on the film creator, and I don't think this is a regurgitation of Star Wars. It like they definitely have a more macabre. I definitely get more of a 2001: A Space Odyssey vibes from this. More at least from the original motion picture. It's like very trippy, very surreal, megalophobia, mechanic, space, kind of like weird dream shit.
That's what I'm saying. The way I look at it is there's only so many notes with which to create music. There's only so many colors you can make a painting with, right? Like, so like you're in sci-fi, you're in the space genre, so things are going to be similar to each other to a certain point. I don't think one is a ripoff of another. Like, if you want to talk ripoffs, then Star Wars is a ripoff of Flash Gordon of those days, and like it's a total tribute to that. And it's like everything is derivative of something on planet Earth. That's how we gain knowledge. That's how we tell stories. Like it's all connected. It's all based on something else that we saw or heard. So no, I don't agree. I don't think it's a ripoff of Star Wars at all.
I agree. That's like the last thing I thought about actually watching the movie. And as they say, there's not really a new idea. You know, we all steal from each other and are inspired by each other, especially in artistic, creation. We all pull from other resources that inspire us. So
especially with this show, NASA, man, like, and I feel like, I mean, the original Star Trek series came out when they were doing the Apollo missions and all that shit, but this is kind of almost a reflection, and because, you know, there were casualties in the NASA mission, and I feel like that's why maybe they went, it's like, space travel is dangerous. Like, people die, even in the future, like, things that you don't anticipate happen. And I find it because like they use NASA a lot in this with V'ger and like National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Like they make a tribute, they make a credit to them in the credits, and it's
Yeah, I think space in this is more
portrayed more seriously, I guess.
Well, it's more seriously, but it's also a different kind of character than it is in Star Wars. Like, first off, I would say, like, if you think Star Wars invented this, you should watch more movies.
You should read more sci-fi.
Like you said, Aaron, this goes back to Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon. Like,
before,
in the 60s, Star Trek was
so
doing
many
more
different
stuff
roots.
before Star Wars. And even like, if we're just comparing like how they're doing it, like, I feel like when you're seeing shots of the Millennium Falcon and the TIE fighters and the Death Star, that all feels very different than, say, the Enterprise probing V'ger. There's two very different vibes going on. And I feel like the space shots in Star Wars are more vehicles for the action, whereas space in Star Trek is almost a character in of itself. Like, the danger in Star Wars is coming from the Death Star and the TIE fighters,
lack
but
of oxygen.
Right, and Star Trek, that feels more like space itself is the thing they are tackling. So there's a different sense of scale and what it is they're even like evoking. Yeah. And there's much more of like in Star Wars, it's pew pew and yeah. And Star Trek can definitely have that. Let's not kid ourselves. Some of the Star Trek movies just goes full on into the. Certainly in this movie, it's definitely trying to communicate different things to you than I think Star Wars is. So at least if we're comparing the 1977 Star Wars and the 1979 Star Trek, I think there are two very different feels that you're getting from the space shots in this film.
There's something about, I feel like this happens a lot, like competing studios coming out with similar movies around the same time too, that might have something to do with it, where people don't have the big picture in mind. They're like, oh, you guys just stole that from Star Wars or whatever. And it's like, no, like there's this bigger thing going on. There's this.
People are capitalizing on space, the idea of space, because everybody's like, I want to see the next big space movie. I want to see the next big Marvel movie. I want to see the next big Western movie. Like,
this feels very inspired by the success of Star Wars. It does not feel like it is emulating Star Wars at all.
No.
Though this movie, I guess, speaking to some of this, I guess, space shots and stuff, I guess the other big criticism this movie gets is it's being too reliant on the spectacle and special effects at the expense of the story and characters. What would our thoughts be on that?
Yeah, actually. What we were talking about before, I feel like these two specifically, like, you want to love them more than you do. You wish that they were part of the original cast. Because both these actors do such a great job. And I remember reading an article about the woman who plays Ilea. She's a supermodel. She got the role, and she's like, and they asked for her to shave her head off, and she totally did it. She was totally on board with.
She shaved her all. She had this huge mane of hair, and she shaved it all off for this movie. You can see her crying, and like they filmed it, and she's crying afterward, just like, oh my god, that hair was so beautiful. Because you're like, yeah, it's incredible.
But yet she still looks so kind of beautiful with her bald head as well, I must say. But both these guys, like, they have such presence in the film. Like, you wish you empathized with them more.
They're like the classic ingenues in a weird, trippy cosmic sci-fi setting.
What was the original question?
Well, I was just talking to like I said, some criticism was on like the spectacle and special effects trumping the story and characters.
I would say, yeah, kind of like a lot of the story is based off of V'ger, like, and reintroducing the Enterprise. There's that whole love sequence of the Enterprise and the Enterprise going into V'ger, like a lot of special effects. I gotta shut up now.
No,
let somebody else talk.
I agree. I do think that, and what we've already discussed a lot is the lack of character development in the show. I think without, really diving into it, or at least like honestly, like the whole time I'm like, I love the love story, and also I don't think it's necessary to be in the story as much as it's important to like reestablish the connections between the people that we know. And I do feel like without actually like diving in and fleshing out the story, we do lose that with the special effects overtaking what's really something that I find interesting as an audience member, the story. So, yeah.
Totally. And something that always comes back around is you really just love the connection between these original crew members. And when they try to get away from that, that's when the show kind of falters, I feel like. But that's where the real heart of the show is. And if had they just focused on the original crew for the movie, it would have been probably a Grand Slam home run.
You know, we did talk about, like, in all our watching the original episodes for the podcast, that, like, they kind of figure out that the show is really about the friendship between the characters. That's what ends up making the whole show work.
Right. And just the chemistry between that particular ensemble. That's where it's at.
I think for me, it's like a mixed bag. I think there are definitely times, like it is certainly a visual spectacle of a movie. Oh my God, especially watching this V'ger sequence, it's just trippy as fuck. It's really cool though. I think there are times where it does it really well, where it is using the visuals to communicate what's going on. Like, I think the Klingon battle at the beginning is really effective. I think the sequence where Spock is traveling through the V'ger, like, dimensional image is really cool. I think mostly the shot, like when they're doing some of the stuff with the Enterprise works, it does go along, it does go a bit long. I think there are times where it really works and the visuals are actually communicating the story, and then they are kind of detracting from what you would wish they would kind of spend a little more time on. So I think it's a mixed bag for me.
I very much agree with that. Like, if you look, I think for me, my favorite visual representation of spectacle is the little blossoming orifice, whatever it is, for V'ger, that is almost like it's breathing. Mm-hmm. It's opening, it's closing, like it's breathing, like it's a living. Exactly.
It's a sphincter.
Exactly. It's literally a butthole. Let's be honest. It's a butthole.
It's V'ger's butthole.
But it's alive. It's alive. It's something that is on, almost seems like it's on a living creature.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
And I think everything that goes on, I guess technically inside V'ger, is almost exactly where you want it. I don't think it's over the top at all. But it is very easy to get it over the top from there. Mm-hmm. It's a fine line you walk, I think, with this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes it walks it, sometimes it kind of falters.
Yeah.
I guess the last kind of big point we'll talk about real quick is, Sean, for you specifically, being like, this would have been some people's first exposure to Star Trek. This is kind of your big first exposure to it as its own thing. How do you think this works as like an introduction to Star Trek?
As an introduction, I don't want to say it's the best introduction, mainly because a lot of these characters have been around throughout the series, and are introduced that way. But having a rudimentary knowledge of Star Trek, like knowing who Kirk is, knowing who Spock is, the main characters, I think you could watch this film and grasp a solid 80-90% of what happens. But I don't think it's, if you're gonna go in and just become a Star Trek fan and watch, most of the things they've ever put out, I don't think it would be the best place for you to start. Mm-hmm. I'd say start at the beginning, find out who Spock is, find out who Kirk is. Start at the beginning, go through it, and work up to the film.
I think in a lot of ways, in some ways, this movie is definitely for the fans. Even though they were trying to hit a mainstream audience, and like you said, I think it does work. Like 80-90% of it works as just its own thing. I think for us, Aaron, watching, because we've been watching the classic episodes, this almost feels like there's no real series finale to the original 60s show. It gets canceled. And the last episode is offensively bad. There's no real actual end to the show. This almost feels like a grand finale to that whole Star Trek thing, like this almost as if they're making this. It's like they don't know there's going to be sequels. There's, this almost just feels like, in a way, this could be one last big potential hurrah, and we may never, ever do this again.
Yeah. And actually, to me, it feels more like a premiere, like it was going to be, like an introduction to the new Phase 2. So not so much a finale, but a reunion, and bringing all these people back together. For me, the finale comes maybe in, what is it, where Spock gets lost? Is it Star Trek 3?
They lose Spock at the end of Star Trek 2, and the whole third movie is literally called The Search for Spock.
That one, to me, feels like a finale to the franchise. But this one feels like, just like jumping back into a new season more than anything else. A really long episode, a really big, fantastic premiere of the new TV show.
It's no surprise that this originally was a pilot for a television show that got turned into a movie. Like, if as soon as you say that, it's like that makes sense to me. Well, there you go. I guess we'll do a couple little behind the scenes, little tidbits before we close it all up. The entire original cast. This is, I think, the only movie that has the entire original cast, including Majel Barrett as Dr. Chapel. She shows up.
Dr. Chapel, not nursing.
Grace Lee Whitney also shows up as Yeoman Rand. She's in the transporter doing that, because she was like a main character in the first half of the first season, and she never shows up again, and she does show up in the movie. Also, you'll find this interesting, Latoya. The Klingon captain was played by Mark Leonard, who played the Romulan commander in Balance of Terror.
Oh, wow. Really?
Who also plays Spock's dad in the show as well.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's him.
Popping up all over the place.
Spock.
Actors have a tendency of doing that in Star Trek. They play one role and then they show up as a main character later on.
Yeah, he was the first character to play. He played a Romulan, a Klingon, and a Vulcan.
It's the magic of forehead ridges.
He did the big three. First time you see that new Klingon makeup, because in the TV show they just look like swarthy humans with Fu Manchu beards. And here they have these ridges, and they're speaking the language, so they actually kind of feel like, oh, okay, yeah. Now they feel like aliens.
Yeah, which is a little controversial, I think, among the fan base, this new depiction of Klingons.
Originally, but now they're so iconic, those ridges.
And the way they talk.
Klingon
is an official language.
Yeah, this is the first time you hear Klingon spoken as a language. Part of it was James Doohan as Scotty, and Mark Leonard were kind of riffing. It's it should sound like something. It's what about kind of Mongolian? But if you cut out just this kind of weird alien language, you cut out all the vowels. And then so later on, they just kind of came up with this dialect. And later on, a linguist, Mark Okrand, especially for Star Trek 3, they hired him to listen to all the dialogue in this movie. It's and now expound upon it. And he eventually created a whole language out of it, just by these two actors kind of riffing on what this alien language should sound like.
That's so cool.
This was also the first time we hear Vulcan as a language. However, the difference is, if you pay close attention, you can tell there are actors dubbing the lines for the Vulcan masters on Vulcan. They originally recorded all those lines in English, and then decided, you know what, let's be consistent and have all the aliens in these scenes talking in their native languages. So they had those original actors go back and re-record the lines, but they came up with a language that matched the movement of the mouths of the English. So if you go back and watch it, you can tell they're actually mouthing English words, but they make the Vulcans sound alien. But they're using the same.
Okay, that makes sense, because I was watching it and there were a couple phonetics that weren't matching up, and I was incredibly confused how they were getting that sound.
Yeah,
it just. But that makes more sense. Okay.
Some of them were specifically on point too, smash, 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 Spock.
Spock. The correct pronunciation I learned today is Spock. With that guttural
Spock.
But you can't, a lot of linguistics go that way. It's they're very similar. It's you can't, but yeah, I would identify it with Sean's journey in language.
the molds of Leonard Nimoy's Spock ears are the actual original molds from the original TV show. They still used them for his ears for this movie.
They've got to smell so bad.
Sweat.
I think we mentioned this before the movie, but this is one of the last films to use an overture.
In general, or just Star Trek?
Just in general, like it filmed that's a classic movie thing.
I appreciated the overture.
They put that in this movie. So actually, the same year, Disney's The Black Hole had an overture. It was John Barry's score. I think these two movies in 1979 are about like the last two movies that do it. Same year, these two kind of space movies trying to ape on the success of Star Wars.
Tout up those composers, man. Beautiful music.
This is the first time we see Earth in Star Trek. You don't see it, at least in the modern sense. There are those couple of time travel episodes, but you never see what Earth of the future looks like in the TV show. This is the first time when they showed that shot of San Francisco in the future. It's the first time you've ever had any context of what Earth looks like in the future, which is kind of fun. And then the movie did receive mixed reviews upon release, which is still kind of its legacy, though. This is one of those movies where its reputation has improved over the years, especially with the releases of like the director's cut. But this is still a polarizing film among the fan base. Like I said, some people rank it pretty high, some rank it right at the bottom. I have a lot of nostalgia for this one. I would rank it rather high, but for me, it's like maybe this is my Persian flaw. I give the benefit of the doubt to The Big Swing. Maybe you don't always get the home run, but how many episodes of TV shows are just like they're just doing the same old, not taking any chances, not doing anything interesting, and just like, but it's not bad. It's just fine.
It's just there. Yeah, if you're gonna fail fucking huge.
I feel like that's what they
go for it
with this movie. Is like, it's not like any other episode in the original series. Like, they wanted to make a movie. They wanted the stakes to be high. They wanted grandeur. And I feel like this was a big swing. I feel like just
huge swing.
Riffing off what you were talking about, it's a huge big swing.
Yeah, so I feel like I always give the benefit of the doubt to that, and I think there's a lot of some of the most artistically interesting stuff comes from stuff that's imperfect.
Yes,
and it is interesting in something like this to compare and contrast. There are things in this movie I think that really, really work and still really hold up, and some things that don't work so well. But I think it's interesting within the same movie to be able to see these things working and not working, and really be able to talk about it and compare and contrast. I think makes for an interesting experience. Any final thoughts? Any other final thoughts before we hang it all up?
Your derivative.
Boo! Star Wars is better. Or Darth Vader. Frodo. Wow, what a time. What a movie. This was really fun, guys. Thank you all for coming. Sean, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was a treat and a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast.
Hopefully at some point in the future we'll get you back to maybe look at something else. Maybe an episode from the TV show. So now that you've actually got to see a movie, so see because so much of it is actually there's hundreds of episodes of the TV show, and that's where it's most famous is the TV show. So that might be fun to look at something from the TV show. Latoya, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so fun. I'm glad we got to kind of show you a bit of Star Trek you haven't seen before.
Yeah, it's always insightful and lovely to observe and take in, and so thanks for always inviting me to be a part of it.
Oh yes, and we'll most certainly have you back to talk about some stuff coming up in the future, I would hope.
You know where I am?
I know where you live. Latoya! Stop my podcast!
Hang up the phone.
Tyson Baker. Once again, thank you so much.
Pleasure as always, Jaron. Always a pleasure to geek out and cry about Star Trek on the podcast.
Yeah, and we will also have you back, Tyson, to talk about some of the stuff coming up as well, and the next generation.
Looking forward to it.
Which is a good segue into, I guess, us closing it all out. Aaron, wow. We just finished classic Star Trek for this first phase of the podcast.
What a ride.
Yeah.
Some peaks, some valleys.
Oh, my God, some valleys.
I feel like we struck a good balance, though, of showing the people what to expect from their original series watch through. I can say words. And I'm excited to move on to the next generation. My wife actually picked it up and is watching it right now.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Cass? Yeah, this is a great last note to go out on, in the sense of, because we watched some of the classics and the all-time greats, and then we watched some of the, I don't know. So in terms of just like going out, like a note to go out on, I feel like this movie encapsulates so much about when Star Trek works, what works, and when it doesn't work, what doesn't work about it.
Yeah. It's one of those it's a good intro episode, I guess, to show people like this is kind of what you're gonna get when you watch Star Trek,
For good or for ill.
a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
I'll tell you what, in almost every episode of the 60s show, we had to address some of the blatant sexism going on, and I don't feel like we had to talk about that in this movie, so maybe that's a plus.
No, except for the supermodel probe.
Hi, Leah.
And the whole race based off of
Sex. My oath of celibacy is on
Other than
record.
that.
Other than that.
Minor detail.
But, they're not wearing ultra mini skirts where it's like if they bend over an inch, it's like, I see all of your ass. All of it.
That is your whole vagina.
There were legs. Aaliyah had some legs
Yeah.
in with her thing. Like,
Or her
but
little
not as
bathrobe,
much.
whatever that was.
It's 10 years later after the original series. There's not as much sexualization of women.
Not as much.
My question
We've
for that
come
is,
so far.
That's in Kirk's chamber, isn't it? Is that his bathroom?
I think it's supposed. It's just just some random crew quarters.
Okay.
Is where they find her. And then she's wearing that. Oh, let me just materialize this sexy bathrobe for you to wear for the rest of the movie.
Because she was naked for.
She was. For a hot second, she wasn't just.
Yep.
I was digging the collar.
The collar.
It was right out of like a
pops.
60s futurist magazine or something.
The glowing jewel out there.
Yeah.
I'm Jaron Hatch.
I'm Aaron Cole.
Tyson Baker.
Latoya Cameron.
And I'm Sean Leonard.
It's just not great as an ending.
It's
I don't
not
think.
great, but that's very much in line with the movie you just watched.
I mean, it's fine. As us
has
reading
its
off our
moments.
names, I think that's about as good as we could have done.
Sounds like SNL.
Just got to finish it with it, and we'll go over there.
It'll go out there. That way.
That away.
Hey, Bill, we don't have a last line for the movie. Can you just come up with something? Sure, I got it. Action. Out there.
I mean, we could end it with
That way.
That's it.
We have to shut production now. The movie opens in 7 days. Okay, that's it. That's the movie.
That's a wrap.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to share your own Star Trek story or give us a hot take on the episode we just watched, you can join the conversation by visiting our Discord server. You can find us by clicking on the link in the show description.